Here we have one key objective. We want to practice futures and we want to practice options. For the November 2025 exams, it's an important topic. The reason being that we have interest rate tested in May, and so ICAN would often swap between interest rate and currency risk management. So at the end of this session, you would be able to fully understand how currency rate futures work, as well as how option works as well. So if you have a question on that, you should be able to attempt it fully without any challenge once you follow the steps we would discuss in class. So in our previous session, just a quick few minutes really to just have a few recap on our previous session. We looked at May 2022 and we commenced by considering forwards. And the forward contract is pretty simple. It's an agreement that is reached today for the future. So if Mr. A is interested in hedging against adverse movement in currency risk using the forward market, all Mr. A needs to do is to approach a financial market, over-the-counter financial market, and seek for a forward contract for the period that they're interested in. So having a quick review of our question again on that. So we had, for the question, we have that you've worked with a major oil servicing company in Nigeria with headquarters in US for the past 6 years. Recently, you've completed your ICAN exam and you've been asked to join the International Treasury Department in New York City for a 2-year attachment. The company is due to pay UK supplier the sum of 5 million in 3 months' time. Now, if you're dealing with a forward, all you're interested in is to be able to identify what is the exchange rate for 3 months forward. So when you look at the requirement of the question, you would see that we have a 3 months forward here. So this is a 3 months forward. Yeah, so that's a 3 months forward. So that's what we're interested in. And so we go ahead and enter into the transaction for the applicable 3 months forward. But then if you take a look at the forward, you would realize that there are two values. There is 1.9223, and then there is 1.9339. Those are two values. And we explained in a previous class as a quick recap that a currency market works like every other market out there. Whoever sells dollar or pounds or euro, whatever foreign currency they sell, will be interested in doing two things to make money. They'll be interested in buying that currency low, and they'll be interested in selling it high. That's the key point. You're interested in buying low and selling high. So if you as a US firm wants to pay somebody in pounds, it means that you need to buy pounds. You need to buy pounds. And because you need to buy pounds, when you approach the FX dealer to buy pounds, the FX dealer will clearly sell the pounds to you at a higher rate. And the higher rate between 1.9223 and 1.9339 is obviously 1.9339. That's the higher rate. So what's the dollar equivalent of that? We just multiply 1.9339 multiplied by 5 million. That gives us a total value of $9,669,500. So forward is pretty straightforward. Just know the period, go into the question and find the specific month or date that it applies to, and then you just consummate the transaction. So that's pretty straightforward. So let's move on to the next one, which is futures. Okay, let's move on to the next one, which is our focus for today. First focus for today, which is futures. Okay, so we're looking at currency futures. To get this full screen. All right. So when it comes to currency futures, there are a number of accepted methods, a number of generally accepted methods for currency futures. However, for the purpose of our practice and our exams as well, I'm going to teach you guys a detailed methodology and steps you should follow whenever you have a question on currency futures. Now, if you follow these steps, you would never get currency futures wrong. That's the key point. If you follow the steps we're going to discuss right now, you would never get currency futures wrong. Sorry, I'm trying to admit some guys that just joined now. Okay. So what are these steps? One, whenever you have a question on futures, the first thing you need to bear in mind is that you need to select the futures to buy. So you need to determine the applicable futures. So that's the first step you need to determine. You need to determine the applicable futures or the futures date. So you need to determine the applicable futures date. Yeah, so that's one of the first step you need to buy. You need to determine. And what futures will be applicable for us to buy? Very easy to determine. Whatever futures we would buy would be the future that is open as at our requirement date. So if you take a look at our question, for example, you notice that when you go to the futures market for this transaction, we have more than one future. So this is futures. This is the futures contract right here. So you notice that we have 2 months expiry and we have 5 months. So we need to determine which of these dates is applicable for our contract. So that's the first thing we need to determine whenever you have a question on futures. You need to establish the applicable futures for your contract. Very important. And we're going to show you guys how to do it. We said it is the future that's available as at the requirement date. The second thing you do after that is to determine your hedging strategy. That's the second thing. You determine your hedging strategy. Now, there are only 2 hedging strategies when it comes to futures. They are a long position or a short position. So I'll tell you guys and show you guys how to pick which of these hedging strategy. The next thing you would then decide or determine right after you determine your hedging strategy is the number of contracts. Is the number of contracts. Now, hedging of futures are sold in blocks. So they are sold in blocks, for example, that may be sold in blocks of 500,000. So it'd be 500,000, 1 million, 1.5. So you need to buy them in those blocks. So we need to determine how many of those futures are we going to buy. And that's the number of contracts we're talking about. To determine the number of contracts, we have a very easy and straightforward formula for that. It is the amount required. Oops, sorry, what did I press? It is the amount required divided by the contract size. Okay, sorry, I don't know what I pressed. So the number of, sorry, I'm almost there right now. Okay, so that's the next step would be the number of contracts, which would be the amount required divided by the contract size. Divided by the contract size. So that's our step 4. Step 3 rather. At step 4, so I need to admit some guys quickly. Okay. So at step 4 would then be to determine the concept of basis and remaining basis. And I'm going to explain this concept as we solve the question. So there's no need to do it right here and then have to do it again when we're solving the question. And then our step 5 is to determine our lock-in rate. Then step 6, if it is required by the question, would be to settle in net. So that's our final step, settlement in net. Yeah, so that's our 6 steps in a futures question. Okay, that's a 6 step in a futures question. So let's look at these steps and then begin to address them. Since the first thing, like we said, is to determine the applicable futures date. Second is a hedging strategy. The third is the number of contracts. The fourth is the basis or remaining basis. The fifth is a lock-in rate. And the sixth is our settlement in net. So let's begin with the futures date. Now, when you go into the futures market to buy a futures, you might have more than one futures in the market. The futures you would buy would be the futures that is open as at the requirement date. That's the key point. It is the future that is open as at our requirement date. So if the futures is not open at that date, we cannot buy it. We need the futures to be open as at our requirement date. So let's begin with our solution. And the first thing will be our futures date. So our first point would be our futures date. So interested in the future that is open as at our requirement date. So the big first question would be, when do we need to make payment in the foreign currency? Or when do we need to receive the foreign currency? Once we know when we need to make payment or receive the foreign currency, we can then go ahead and look at which of the futures is open as at that date. So let's go back to our question quickly to establish that. So when do we need to make payment? It says here, the company is due to pay a UK supplier when? In 3 months' time. Did you guys see that? In 3 months' time. So when we go to the futures market, we need to get a future that is still open in 3 months' time. So let's go to the market, guys. Let's go to the market and see what's available in the futures market. So here in the question, right here, we have our futures market right here. So we have 2 months and we have 3 months expiry. We need to make payment in 3 months' time. We have 2 months or we have 5 months expiry.
Sir. Sorry to interrupt you, sir. We are not seeing the screen is static. You're not following,
really?
Sir.
Really?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you for pointing that. Thank you for pointing that. It shouldn't be static. Okay, maybe what I'll do is let me disconnect my second screen so that I have just one screen. Maybe the second screen is interfering with if my second screen is interfering with what we're doing. And then I'll just quickly reshare then. So I'll quickly reshare it. So possibly my other screen was interfering with this. Can you guys see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so if I
You
scroll
can, but
down,
it's not
okay,
moving,
so let me
so scroll,
move
say.
down. Let me move down. Let me move down. If I move down, can you guys see as I move down now to the next page where I have my solution for the
It's
steps?
moving now. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So I guess I had more than two screens on because I've been working from home for much of today. So I guess the second screen was interfering with this. So I've put it off. So let me quickly recap the steps again whenever we have a question on futures. I said we're going to follow a 6-step approach. The first is we're going to determine the applicable futures date or the futures to buy. That's the first thing we need to, because when you go to the futures market, you're going to have more than one futures in the market. The second step is that we establish the hedging strategy. There are generally two strategies, a long position or a short position. So when we get to that, I'm going to explain to you guys how we establish which of the positions to take. The third step is that we're going to determine the number of contracts. That is because futures are sold in blocks. So we need to know how many of those blocks are we going to buy. And it is the amount required divided by the contract size. That's our step 3. At step 4, we'll talk about the concept of basis and remaining basis. At step 5, we'll calculate our locking rate. And then at step 6, we'll settle in net. So now that we have the issue of the screen not moving out of our way, let's now begin again with our step 1, which is determining the applicable futures date. Now, we said that the applicable futures to buy would be the future that is open on the requirement date. Hope you guys can see what I'm writing right now. Be sure it's moving.
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's fine now. Okay, so it would be the future that is open on the requirement date. So what that means is that the first question you would ask yourself when you look at the futures question would be, when do we need to make the payment in that foreign currency? Or when do we need to receive the inflow in that foreign currency? So that's the first question. Once we know when we need to consummate the transaction, we then go to the market and find the future that is open as at that date. So let's go right back to our question. So our question mentions right here that we need to pay the UK supplier in 3 months' time. Did you see that? So we need to make the payment in 3 months' time. So when we go into the futures market to buy a futures, we need a future that is still open in 3 months' time. So let's go right to the futures market, which is the details we have in the question, and see the available futures we have. So we have a future that is expiring in 2 months' time. Guys, what do you think? Would that still be open and available in 3 months' time? What do you think? The answer is no, because it is expiring in 2 months. We need to make our payment in 3 months' time. So we need a future that is open when we need to make payment. And then we have the future that's expiring in 5 months. So what that therefore means that it's from now to 5 months. It is open. So we'll do our payment in 3 months' time. So this futures 5 months is still open as at when we need to make a payment. So that would be the applicable futures. The 2 months is not applicable because it would have expired by the time we need to make our futures. So the applicable futures for us then would be the 5-month expiry futures. So the applicable futures for us would be the 5-month expiry. So that's our applicable futures is the 5 months expiry futures. So that is our applicable futures at a price. What is the price of that futures? Let's quickly pay for the prices of that futures from the market. From our question, the price for the 5 months futures is 1.9170. So that's 1.9170. Okay, so that's the futures would buy, because that's the one that is still open. The second thing we would do would be to determine our hedging strategy. And there are two basic hedging strategies. There are, just to keep it really simple for you guys, we have the long position and the short position. Now, if you are buying now, if you're buying, that would be a long position. If you are selling, that would be selling futures now, that would be a short position. So back to our question, what does the oil servicing firm want to do? Do they want to buy the foreign currency? And if that's what's available in the futures market, then they're taking a long position. Or do they want to sell the foreign currency? And if that is what is available in the futures market, then they are taking a short position. So what do they really want to do? Let's go back to our question and see what they want to do. If they are buying the foreign currency and that's available in the futures market, we take a long position. So let's go back to our question. So what do they want to do? All right, so it says that you are working with a major oil servicing firm with headquarters in US. The company is due to pay the UK supplier the sum of £5 million in 3 months' time. So you are a US company, you use dollar. You need to pay somebody in pounds. So what do you need to do? You need to do what? You need to what? You need to buy what? Pounds. You need to buy pounds. You're a US supply company. You need to pay UK company in pounds, so you need to buy pounds. And the futures market clearly shows that futures are sold in pounds. So we need to buy pounds. And so we'll go out, we take a long position, because if you're buying now, the strategy would be a long position. However, if it were a case where we are receiving money, we're not paying someone, but we're receiving money, we need to sell. And if the futures market has that currency in place, we sell futures now. So because we need to make payment, because we need to make payment, we need to buy pounds. And when we need to buy pounds, the applicable strategy would be a long position. So that's the free mark, a very quick free mark for everyone. So would say that the applicable hedging strategy is a long position. This is because the oil servicing firm requires or needs to buy pounds to make the payment, because the oil servicing firm needs to buy pounds. The US oil servicing firm, so let me put US to qualify it properly. This is because the US oil servicing firm needs to buy pounds to settle the obligation. And the futures dealer clearly has pounds in place. So when you are buying, take a long position. Okay, so that's our hedging strategy. Let me take Bossade, please go ahead.
Oh, sorry, that the question has been answered.
Okay, all right, thank you. If anyone has any question, please feel free to just stop me. That's why we're here. That's why I'm doing this, really. All right, so that is our hedging strategy, the long position. You need to buy pounds, and the futures market has pounds in you have the pounds in blocks of 62,500. So we'll go ahead and buy what's available. The next thing we need to do, establish, is to determine the number of contracts. And the reason is because the futures market are sold in blocks. So if you look at our futures part, these are part on futures. It says contract size 62,500. So they are sold in blocks of 62,500. So we need to know how many do we need to buy since they are sold in blocks. So that is 62,500. So let's determine the number of contracts. So that's our third step, which is going to be pretty straightforward. Once you follow the steps, you can't go wrong. So that is the number of contracts. So it is the amount required divided by the futures contract size. Okay, so how much does the oil servicing firm in US need in pounds? How much do they require? The question says that they need to pay the UK supplier the sum of 5 million. That is what they need to pay. That's what they require. Our futures market, what's our contract size? So these are futures market right here. These are futures market. What's the contract size? 62,500 contract size. So that divided by 62,500, how many contracts are we looking at? So this is 5 million divided by 62,500. Okay, so how many contracts are we looking at right now? But how many contracts are we looking at? Where's my calculator? Guys, fetch your calculator as well quickly. 5 million divided by 62,500. How many contracts are we looking at?
80.
80 contracts, right?
Contracts,
yeah, that's correct. 80 contracts, 62,500. Bossade, your hand is still up. Is that another question or it's the previous one? Feel free to go ahead. Okay, all right, thank you. Just let me drop it down so I can track any new hands that comes up. Okay, so let me quickly check the charts if there are any questions there. Okay, my screen is not moving. Yeah, I think we've addressed that. Thank you for bringing it. I wouldn't even have known if you guys didn't tell me. So thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, addressed that. Okay, so 80 contracts. So that's our first 3 steps. Pretty straightforward. Number of the date, we know how to check that. The hedging strategy, we know how to check that. The number of contracts, we know how to check that. Now let's go into the concept of basis. Now, pay attention to this part pretty well because it's pretty straightforward, but then it's important to just pay attention so you get the concept around it. So that is the step 4, which is the concept of basis and remaining basis. Okay, that's the concept of basis and remaining basis. Okay, so let's assume that we find ourselves here as noun. So this is where we are now. We're here right now. We're trying to hedge against adverse movement in exchange rate. And we buy a futures that is expiring when? When is our futures expiring? In how many months' time? In 5 months. Yeah, no, the futures we buy, not when we need to borrow. The futures we buy, the market does not have a 3-month futures. The market has a 2 months and a 5-month futures. You can say it. The market has a 2 months and a 5-month futures. We didn't buy the 2 months because it would have expired before we need to. Before we need to make the payment, it would have expired. We need to make the payment in 3 months' time. So if we buy the 2 months, it would have expired before we even need to use it. So we can't buy the 2 months. So we buy the 5 months, but the 5 months will still be open when we need to make the payments. We buy the 5 months. So today is now, we buy a future that's expiring in 5 months' time. And the future that's expiring in 5 months' time has a price. And that price is 1.9. Sorry, what's the rate again? Let me double check. The question at December futures was the price. Yeah, 1.917. That's the price, 1.917. Okay, so that's 1.917. So what it basically means is this, that if we make the payment in 5 months' time on the dot, if we make our payment in 5 months' time on the dot, the exchange rate would be 1.917. But we're not making our payment in 5 months' time. When does the oil servicing company need to make the payment? Question says that we need to make the payment in 3 months' time. Did you guys see that? So let's look at that again quickly. We need to make the payment in 3 months' time. But we bought a future that's expiring in 5 months because that is what is available in the market. But we're not holding it until the end of the 5 months. We need to make a payment in 3 months' time. So 3 months would be somewhere here. Maybe somewhere here. So because we're not holding it up to the maturity, which is 5 months, we need to look for a way to adjust the price. So we need to look for a way to adjust the price. The price of 1.917 to reflect the value in 3 months' time. That's what we need to do. We need to look for a way to adjust that 1.917 to reflect the value in 3 months' time. If we're making the payment in 5 months' time later, we wouldn't do that because 5 months is 1.917. So let's see how we can adjust that. So we need to know what is the rate now versus what is the rate in 5 months' time. So we know what the difference is between this period. So what is the rate now? The rate now is what we call the spot rate. The rate now is what we call the spot rate, and this is the spot rate. So the spot rate, the rate now, that is the spot rate. So the rate right now is 1.9410 to 1.9531. So these two rates, one of them is the buy rate by the FX dealer, and one of them is the sell rate by the FX dealer. So we need to determine which of them is applicable to us. Now, if you're an FX dealer, which is like every business out there, how do you make money? Do you buy your market at a high price and sell low, or you buy your market at a low price and sell high? What does every business out there do? What do? They buy what? They buy low and they sell what?
High.
They sell high. That's how every business makes money. You buy low, you sell high. Buy low, you sell high. So what that means is if I have 1.9410 and 1.9531, the low one would be the one that the FX dealer is going to buy FX if I have FX to sell to them. And the high one would be the one that the FX dealer will sell FX if I need to buy FX from them. Is that concept clear? Is that concept clear? If it's not clear, please make it the hand raise feature. Every business there, you buy low, you sell high. That's the principle for every business out there. You buy low, you sell high. So if you apply that principle to determine which of these two rates is the buy one, the FX there, like every businessman, would buy dollar at a low price. So if I have dollar to sell, for example, I have $100 to sell, the FX dealer would buy from me at a low price, and then they would then sell that dollar to someone who needs it at a higher price and make a profit, what is called a spread. So the same thing that happens, same thing what happens in the dollar market. It's like every other business out there. So if the oil servicing firm needs to pay a UK supplier £5 million, it means that they need to buy pounds, because the US firm, they don't have pounds, they use dollar. They use dollar, they don't use pounds. So they need to buy pounds. Now, if they need to buy pounds and they go to the FX market to say, we want to buy pounds, at what rate will the FX market or the FX dealer sell the pounds to them? They'll sell at what? The higher rate. Because that's what every business does. They sell at the higher rate. So that means that the applicable rate between this and this for our transaction is this one, which is 1.9531. So the rate right now, the spot rate is the exchange rate right now. For our transaction, the spot rate right now is 1.9531. Okay. We entered into we bought a futures with a price of 1.917 for 5 months. What is the difference between this here and here? What's the difference between the price now and the futures price? So that is 1.9531 minus 1.917. Okay. Sorry, let me take that again. 1.9531 minus 1.917. That is the difference is 0.0361. 0.0361. And this is for a period of 5 months. Okay, so that is from here to here is 5 months. So this difference covers this period of 5 months. So we assume, let's make an adjustment now, because we assume that the difference covers up on a linear basis. So we have a 5 months contract. We're going to, out of the 5 months, we're going to use or make out of the 5 months, we're going to use or make the payment in 3 months' time. So how many months do we have left after we have made our payment that will be unused or outstanding? How many months?
2 months.
2 months. 2 months. So it's a total of 5 months between now and 5 months' time, but we're going to make a payment in 3 months' time. So we have just 2 months outstanding. So that is what is outstanding. So let's determine what will be the equivalent, what is the monetary value, the equivalent value of that 2 months. And that is what is called remaining basis. Remaining basis equals to the equivalent value for the unused period.
Sir, please, can you just quickly explain it again? I'm kind of lost.
I would definitely do that. So, but let me just write the formula and then I would explain it again. So that is unused months divided by total months multiplied by basis. So this difference is called basis. Okay, so let me explain it again. All right, let's do it together one more time quickly. All right. So a futures contract fixes an exchange rate for you. So if you go into a futures contract and you buy a futures for a particular amount and for a particular expiry date, that would be the price, the exchange rate you've agreed with the dealer. So if, for example, you buy a future that is expiring in 5 months, just like we have in this question, what it basically means is that if you intend to make the payment in 5 months on the dot, this would be the exchange rate, 1.917. But based on our question, when are we making the payment? Are we making the payment in 5 months' time on the dot? Are we? No, we are not. we're making the payment in 3 months' time. So what therefore means is that we cannot use 1.917 for our valuation because this is the value in 5 months. So we need to look for a way to adjust the price of 1.917 to reflect the value in 3 months' time. So how do we do that? We ask ourselves first, what is the exchange rate now? And the exchange rate now, the term used to describe the exchange rate now is called the spot rate. It's called the spot rate. So we look at our question and say, okay, what is the exchange rate now, which is the spot rate? And the question tells us that the exchange rate now, which is the spot rate, is a range, it's a group of, it's two numbers. It is 1.9410 to 1.9531. These are two values. Now, one of these value is the buy rate, and one of these value is the sell rate. Okay? So we need to establish which of them is applicable for our calculation. And then we remember that FX dealer is like every market out there. FX market is like every other market out there. And how does it work in every market out there? The business owner would always want to buy their goods at a lower price, and then they will sell it at what? At a higher price to make a profit. That is what every business out there would do. To buy at a lower price, to sell at a higher price to make a profit. So if I am an oil servicing firm in US and I need to pay somebody 5 million pounds, pound is not my currency, the US dollar is my currency. So it means that I need to get pounds, and it means I need to buy pounds. And if I need to buy pounds, based on our previous explanation, if I need to buy pounds, the FX dealer will sell it to me at the higher rate. So that what therefore means is that between these two, what is applicable for our calculation is 1.9531. So we bring down 1.93531 here at our spot rate now. Okay, so we bring that here at our spot rate now. We now say, okay, let's begin our adjustment. This is the rate now. This is the rate in 5 months' time. So what is the difference between now and 5 months? So it is 1.9531 minus 1.917. So that's 1.9531 minus 1.917. That is what gives us 0.0361. And that is what is called basis. Now the 0.0361 is for 5 months. So we need to adjust that. It is the difference for the 5 months. We need to adjust that to accommodate our 3 months. So we say, okay, the total period is 5 months. From now to when we will make our payment is 3 months. We will then have 2 months that is remaining or unutilized. So can we calculate the equivalent value for these unused 2 months? That's what we want to know next using the formula unused months divided by the total months multiplied by basis. Is that clear?
Yes, thank you.
All right, so let's put it in. So what is the unused month? Out of 5, we have 2 months unused. Divided by a total of 5 months multiplied by 0.0361. So what is our remaining basis or our unutilized basis? So that is 2 divided by 5 multiplied by 0.0361. So that gives us 0.01444. So that is the value for the remaining basis or the remaining period. So now let's adjust our 1.917 for that value. And that is what we call our lock-in rate. That is what is called our lock-in rate or our adjusted price. So it is our futures price because that's what we want. That is what we want to adjust. plus the remaining basis. So that will be equals to, if we had held it up to 5 months, it would have been 1.917. So that's our futures price. 1.917. But because it's not up to, we're not holding up to 5 months, we have to adjust it, and the adjustment is 0.0144. 0.0144. Okay. So what do we have as our locking rate? 1.917 plus 0.01444. Okay, so that is 1.9314. 1.931. So that is our locking rate. So what that basically means is that in 3 months' time, that is the exchange rate that will be applicable for that transaction. That interest rate cannot be adjusted. You know, what I mean basically by that is, regardless of what the exchange rate is in the market, that will be the final value for the oil servicing firm to use for that transaction. So let's determine what the monetary value is, the monetary value of that locking rate is, and then we can then speak a little bit more. So which is our step 6, which is the monetary equivalent, the monetary value. Okay, so the exchange rate is 1.93. The exchange rate is 1.9314. So that is the exchange rate. How many contracts are we buying? How many contracts are we buying? We're buying 80 contracts. We're buying 80 contracts. So we're buying 80 contracts. What is the contract size for each of those contracts? For each of those contracts, the size is 62. Contract size 62,500. 62,500. Okay, so what's our total monetary value then? The monetary value in dollar that we need to cough out for that transaction, 1.9314 multiplied by 80 multiplied by 62,500 gives me a total of 9,657,000. 9,657,000. So in 3 months' time, we're going to spend 9,657,000 at the oil servicing firm to pay for the £5 million. Now, guys, take a look at the steps. Any question on any of the steps? We said the first step is to determine the applicable futures date. The second step is the hedging strategy. The third step is the number of contracts. The fourth step is the basis or remaining basis. The fifth step is the locking rate. The sixth step is to determine the value and settlement in net if it is required. If you have a concern with any of these steps, guys, please let's talk. Maya, your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Sorry to disrupt you. From the solution on the ICAN pack, I'm seeing different.
Yeah, I know that as well, and that's because they used a wrong value for the spot rate. It's an error in the pack. I already know that, and that's why I can pick that. So the only difference you're saying is because in the ICAN pack, they erroneously used this value for the spot rate. That's the reason why you have a different answer. The 1.9410, that's an error in that pack. I know that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. It's an error in the pack. I'm not sure why they still published it that way, but it's an error in the pack. Okay. So if you replace for all of the steps we've discussed right now, if you replace what do we call it? If you replace 1.539531 with 1.9410, which is what you have in the pack, you're going to have exact answer you have in the pack. But that is not the right solution, because an FX dealer will not, if you have two rates, the high and the lower rate, an FX dealer will not sell pounds to you at the lower rate. They're going to sell pounds to you at the higher of the two rates. So that's an error in the pack. I know of that. Is that clear? Oh, that's clear. Okay. Yeah, so I know of that. So that's I'm going to speak to that. Okay, so any question on the steps? Any of the steps? Okay, now let's add something a little bit more to this, and that's why futures are called derivatives. And it's not part of this question, but I'm just going to extend the question a little bit, just in case you have that extension in another question. So I'm going to take just less than 5 minutes to do that. Now, this contract we've just explained now is entered into now. This contract we've just explained now is entered into now ahead of the 3 months. So it is not the exchange rate now, but we have locked our exchange rate at 1.314 based on our futures contract. But that is not the current exchange rate in the market, but that is the contract we've already entered into. That in 3 months' time, this is what our exchange rate would be. Now, what happens? Now, this is not part of the question. I'm just extending this just in case you have that as part of a question. Now, what happens if in 3 months' time, the exchange rate is, let's say the exchange rate is 1.95. And what also happens as well in 3 months' time if the exchange rate is 1.2? So what happens if this is what happens in 3 months' time? Now let me point this again. This is not part of the question. I'm just extending my question just in case you have that scenario. Now, we're saying that futures are settled in net. So what does that mean? Now let's see what that means. Whenever you go into currency hedging the futures market, oftentimes the futures market, they don't have physical currency on hand. What happens would be that in 3 months' time, if the exchange rate is 1.5, as the business that buys the futures, they're going to ask you to go and make purchase of that pounds from the market at the current exchange rate. So let's assume that you go to the market and you buy the pounds at 1.25. So how much would you have spent? You would have spent 1.95 rather for 5,000 pounds. So how much would you spend? How much would you have spent to buy the actual pounds in the market? So it would be, that would be 1.95 multiplied by 5 million. So how much is that? That would be 9,750,000. On the other hand, if the rate in 3 months' time happened to be 1.92, not 1.5, regardless of what it is, we're not sure what it will be, but we're just assume that's what it happens to be in 3 months' time. You'll be asked to go and make purchase the FX in the market. So that would be 1.92 multiplied by 5 million. Okay, so how much would that be? 1.92 multiplied by 5 million. I don't know. We don't know what the price would be on that date. We're just making the different assumptions. So that would be 9.6 million. However, you have a contract, a futures contract, to buy 5 million pounds at how much? You have a contract to buy 5 million pounds at how much? at 9,657,000. We have a contract to buy it at that amount. So whatever, regardless of what the market price is, we're going to spend 9,657,000. Regardless of what the price is in the market in 3 months' time, we're going to spend 9,657,000 because that is our locking rate. We cannot go out of our locking rate. So how do we settle in net? This is what we call the concept of settlement in net. So assuming you went and spent 9,750, but you have a locking rate of 9,657. So how much do you need to be refunded to take it to your locking rate of 9,657? How much do you need to be refunded? How much do you think they need to give it, you need to get refunded for? How much? So that will be 9,750 minus 9,657. So how much will you get refunded? So that's 9,750 minus 9,657. 93,000. So you would receive from this transaction the sum of 93,000, which will be a gain or a payment to you. So when you initially spend 9,750, you receive 93,000, it takes you to 9,657, which is the locking rate and the futures contract. Now let's shift to the right a little bit. You have a contract, a futures contract that has a locking rate of 9,657,000. The FX dealer says, okay, go and buy the pounds. And you go to the market and you buy at 9.6, which is lower than your locking rate. You're not going to go free. You have to make a compensation. So you make a compensation or you make a refund. So how much do you need to pay to take it to your locking rate? How much? Which is the loss to you. So how much do you need to refund? You need to refund or make a payment to the other party in the futures contract of 57,000. So in this, the left side of the quadrant, you get money. In this part of the quadrant, you pay money. And that is the reason why futures contracts are called derivatives. Why are they called derivatives? Because whether or not you receive payment or you make payment, which is a loss to you, depends on the value of the underlying item. So the value is derived. The value is derived. Value is derived from the actual price or cost. The actual price or cost or exchange rate, the actual price or exchange rate. Since we're talking about exchange rate, but derivative can apply to currency and other matters. So the value is derived from the actual price or exchange rate. So whether or not you get money or you receive money, the value you get of that transaction is based on the actual price. And that is what it's called. It's called a derivative contract. Okay, so this bit I've just added is not part of this question, guys. I'm just adding that bit just in case ICAN is asking you guys, how would this be settled if the actual price on the settlement date, which is 3 months' time, is this or is that? Whatever it is, the final value would not be more. The final value would not be more or less than the locking rate. So if you spend more in the market, you get compensation, take it down to the locking rate. And if you spend less, you cough out money out of your pocket for the futures dealer to take it to the locking rate. Any question on this extra bit? So that's a good one to know, just in case you have that extra extension. So that's the key problem with futures, guys. That's the key problem with futures. Now, just imagine that you told your company that you want to help them manage foreign currency, All right. So you tell your company, I want to help you guys manage foreign currencies. Let's go into futures. And then they decide to go into that futures. And then in 3 months, now you now come and tell them that they have to pay extra 57,000. Not everyone is going to take that lightly, because they're going to be like, but you told us this transaction will save us money, but we're ending up paying extra. It don't go well with everyone. And that is what leads to the concept of option, which is our next method, which is our third, our third question as well, option. So moving on to the next part, if there are no question on futures, which is option.
Excuse me, sorry, sir.
Yeah. Just make use of your hand, switch on, and you can go ahead. Go ahead.
From my own perspective, I thought that the thing will be static, irrespective of the fluctuation. That's the essence of it. But this one, either you're paying more or you're gaining.
Yeah, it's static. It's static. So look at it. So irrespective of the flow, so our futures value, how much is it? How much do you calculate at our futures? 9657. Did you see that? So regardless of what the price is, whether it's this or it is this, how much do you spend in total under both scenario? How much do you spend in total? Can you see the total? Can you see it?
Yes, sir, I'm seeing it.
Yeah, so yes, it is sir. So it is 9657. Yeah, you pay in total. It is 9657 that you pay in total, regardless of what the price is. The only difference is that futures are settled in net. So in 3 months' time, you are going to be asked as a business person to go and purchase the currency in the market. However, regardless of what you purchase the currency in the market, if you purchase it more than 9.657, you get a refund to take you to 9.657, which is the fixed amount. Did you see that? Did you see that?
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. And in this scenario now, because the futures market, they don't keep foreign currency, it's just a market to manage exchange rate. So in this scenario now, they ask you to go and purchase the FX in the market, and you bought it for less than this. But your total cost must be 9.657. So they ask you need to refund, make a payment so that it balances it up to that fixed amount of 9.657. So it is fixed. The only thing is that you might end up giving out money to get it to the fixed amount. Is that clear now?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, so sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So that is what the problem is, because if you tell your business, for example, we're fixing rate at this, yeah, which is fine, but then you're not asking them to pay some money. It doesn't, and they know very well that if they had gone to the market at that point in time, they would have spent 9.6. We are telling them, don't forget, we have our own is fixed at 9.657, so we have to add extra 57 to it. Sometimes not every manager would understand that. Is that clear? Not everybody will understand that. So just imagine that you tell your company you're fixing at 9.657, and then on the actual date of transaction, they would have bought it at 9.5. They begin to ask questions. So why did we do this in the very first place? Is that clear, madam?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, all right. So that's why the concept of option comes in. So what is an option and what does it do for us? And then we'll then solve our question quickly. So basically, an option So basically, an option gives the holder the right. An option gives the holder the right, but not the obligation to buy or sell an item. So what that means is that you have the right, but you are not obligated. So the implication for you is that if it favors you, you go ahead with the deal. If it doesn't favor you, you pull out. Now, just imagine in this scenario here, you have a locking rate of 9657. So your total cost must be 9657, regardless of what happens. But what happens if in 3 months' time, the naira equivalent of what you would have, sorry, the dollar equivalent, I'll talk about dollar. The dollar equivalent of what you would have spent is 9.5. It doesn't make sense for you to still proceed with 9657 because you're going to, it's safe, you spend less with going with the actual equivalent of 9.5. Because if you are using an option, it gives you that right. But if you are using a futures, your total cost must add up to 9657. So some strategy financial managers want this opportunity where if it favors them, they will proceed. But if it doesn't favor them, they would say, guy, we don't want to proceed with this transaction. And that is where an option comes in. It gives you the right, but not an obligation to do something. However, to acquire that right, you need to pay an upfront premium. The acquisition, cautious of time because I would like to get done with this today. The acquisition of requires that an upfront premium is paid. Okay, so let's look at the steps quickly. The steps, a good number of the steps are almost the same thing as what we have with futures. If you follow the steps, you can never get it wrong, guys. So the first step will be to determine the option date would be the option that is open at our requirement date. To consummate the transaction. Then we look at the option market and see which option is open as at the requirement date. The next would be our option strategy or a hedge strategy. Our option hedging strategy. Now there's two strategies. It's either a call option or a put option. A call option is the right to buy something. Which is more or less like our long position on that futures. The right buying now. The put option is the right to sell something. And if you are selling something based on what we discussed under futures, that would be a short position. But in option, we call it a call option or a put option. The third thing we'll then do would be to determine the number of contracts. Formula is basically the same. Once you follow this step, guys, you would never get it wrong. Determine the number of contracts. And the formula, the same thing as we have on futures, it will be the amount required divided by, we're looking at option, so it will be the option contract size. Okay. Now, sometimes in an option market, you might have more than one option that on the date and with the same hedging strategy. What I mean by that is maybe, for example, you take 5-month hedge strategy, 5 months option, and the strategy is called. You might have more than one of that. You might have like 3 or 4 or 5 options that have the same date and the same strategy. So in that situation, we need to determine the option to buy. And then once we decide on the option to buy and we have picked the option to buy, we can then pay the premium, because we need to pay that upfront premium to buy the right. So we pay the upfront premium to buy the right. And then on the requirement date, we then make a decision. So in 3 months' time, we then decide whether or not to go ahead with the option or not. Proceed or not exercise. So that's our steps. Follow the steps, you can't go wrong. So let's go with our step quickly. Most of this stuff are just a repetition of what we've done before. So for those steps, we'll just move a little bit fast. Then for the other ones, we slow down. For the ones we have done the repetition, we slow down a little bit as well. So let's begin with our first step, which is our option date. We said that the option date would be the option that is open on a requirement date. Open on requirement date. So our first question would be, when do we need to make the payment? Because that tells us when we require that transaction. So back to our question, when do we need to make the payment? When do we need to make the payment? In how many months' time?
3 months'
So the
time.
UK supply needs to make the payment in 3 months' time. So we know that whatever option we are buying needs to be open in 3 months' time. So let's go to the option market and see what option is available in the market. So what option is available in the market? Okay, so we have 2 months and we have 5 months option. We can't buy the 2 months option because it would have expired before 3 months, which is when we need to do the transaction. So that leaves us with the 5 months option as the option that is open to us. So the applicable option would be the 5 months option. So basically the same thing as we did with futures. The option would buy would be the option that is open on the date we need to consummate the transaction. And that would be the 5 months option. So that's our first step. That should be 3 marks for everybody. The second thing would be our hedging strategy. Now, there are only 2 hedging strategies that plays in the market when it comes to option: the call option and the put option. The call option is the right to buy something. The put option is the right to sell something. So what does the oil servicing firm need to do? Do we need to buy currency or we need to sell the currency? That's what our question is, what we need to do. And that tells all the hedging strategy would be. So we're a US firm and we need to pay a UK supplier £5 million. So what do you think we need to do? As a US guy that has dollar, we need pounds. What do we need to do? We need to buy pounds. We need to buy pounds. And the right to buy something is called a call option. So the right strategy would be a call option, because we need pounds to make that payment, and we need to buy pounds because we are a US company. We don't have pounds. It's not a currency, so we need to buy pounds. So we've set the applicable strategy. So we can say that the oil servicing firm needs to buy pounds. Oil servicing firm based in the US needs to buy pounds. It's to buy pounds to make the payment. To make the payment, since it is not its currency. Okay, so since it is not its currency, it needs to buy pounds and the right to buy. And the right to buy something is a call option. Okay, the right to buy something is a call option. So therefore, the applicable strategy is a call. Okay, so I need to meet that. So the right to buy something is a call option. So, and therefore, the applicable strategy is a call option. So that's pretty straightforward. Remarks for you guys there as well. Our next step is to determine the number of contracts because options are sold in blocks. So we'll do that quickly. So it's to determine the number of contracts. So that would be the amount required is that 5 million divided by option contract size. Okay. So how much would that be? 5 million is the amount required. What is our option contract size? I know our futures was 62,500. I need to confirm what our option contract size is. It's possible it's the same thing. It's also possible it's a different thing. Okay, so these are option contract size. So these are option market. 31,250 contract size is different from our futures contract size. So that's 31,250. So how many contracts are we looking at then? So that's 5 million divided by 31,250. Okay, so how many contracts are we looking at? 5 million divided by 31,250. How many? Okay, 160 contracts.
Contracts.
Yeah, so 160 contracts. All right. Now let's go back to our question. And then it helps us appreciate why step 4 is necessary. We said that. Okay, Eboma Joy, please go ahead. Yeah, Joy, are you there?
Yes, good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning, please. Yeah, please go ahead.
Please, where is the 5 million amount required? That 5 million pounds.
Okay, so that is the payment. Yeah, so that's the payment that we need to make, the oil servicing firm needs to make. And that's right here. Okay. Can you see it? This is the US company. It's the US company. It needs to pay in a different currency, which is the pound, and it needs to pay 5 million pounds. So that's the amount it requires to make that payment.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right. You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, so back to a question again. Help us appreciate the next step very well. Okay, so we said at the onset that we are buying 5 months option and we are taking a call option. So let's go to our question and even see what we have under 5 months and under call. Let's go to our question and see what we have in the market. What do we have in the market on that? Yeah, so we are back to the market. So this is also the market. So we're not doing put. So everything here doesn't concern us. We're not doing put. We're doing call. We're not doing 2 months. We're doing 5 months. So we have 5 months. And then we have the exercise price. And then we have the premium, which is what we have here. Now you notice in the market, we have 3 options that are call options that have 5-month expiry. So we have this one as number 1. We have this one as number 2. We have this one as number 3. You cannot buy all of the 3. You need to buy one. So we need to determine in our next step, which of these 3 options do we buy? And that is why that step 4 is there, determining the applicable option or the best option to buy. This step, what's that? Typing an option. Yeah, so determining the option to buy or the best option to buy, because sometimes you have more than one option that meets the criteria. If it's just one, then step 4 is not required. If you have just one in the market, step 4 is not required. But if you have more than one in the market that meets the requirement, then step 4 is a must, because you need to know which of them out of all of those ones to buy. So let's determine that quickly. And we can finalize that within the next 5 minutes so that we can round up. Okay, so we need to determine the best option to buy. So there are 3. So we said, okay, for each of them, what is the exercise price? For each of them, what is the exercise price? What is the upfront premium we need to pay now? And what is the total cost? So that we know the cheapest one is the one that we would go for, really, because we are making payment. We need as cheap as possible. So let's compare all of the 3 and see which one makes the most sense for us. So let me begin by putting down copying the exercise price, which is the amount that you would lock to buy, the amount that you have an option to buy or sell the currency at. So we have the exercise prices as 1.90, 1.92, and 1.94. So I'm copying all of those 3 down: 1.90, 1.92, and 1.94. So just copying that down quickly. So 1.90, 1.92, and 1.94. Now, to gain the right, but not an obligation, to buy pounds at either 1.90, 1.92, or 1.94 will require that we pay an upfront premium. So what would be the upfront premium under 1.90? What would be the upfront premium under 1.92? And what would be the upfront premium under 1.94? So let's go right back to our question. Okay, so as we go back to our question, now pay attention to an information here on the question. It says right here that premiums are quoted in cents. So what that means that all of these values are quoted in cents. So what do we mean by cent? So typically, it's more like saying your naira and then kobo equivalent of cent. So if I tell you 1.9 naira and I tell you 50 kobo, can I add 1.90 to 50 directly? Can we add it directly? No, because they're not in the same denomination. You cannot say 1.90 plus 50 because the 50 is in kobo and the other one is in naira term. So what you can basically do would be to say, let us convert the kobo or the cent to the naira equivalent. So how do you do that? You just say whatever the kobo or the cent is divided by 100. So you know that, oh, 50 kobo is the same thing as what? 0.5 naira. So please, you need to pay attention to that extra bit if you have that in your question. You cannot add naira or pound value, which is what you have here, with the cent or kobo direct. So you cannot say 1.9 naira plus 50. So it becomes what? 60 plus what? You can't do that. So you need to convert the kobo to the naira equivalent. So you divide that by 100. So that's what we're going to do here. So these are in cents. So let's convert it to the pound equivalent by dividing it by 100. So that would be 3.55 divided by 100 because it's in cent. 2.32 divided by 100, and then 1.15 divided by 100. Hope that point is clear. If it's not clear, please feel free to raise your hand and ask me if you want to. If that's not clear. Okay. Okay, so I've passed that. Okay, so the first one will be 3.55 divided by 100. We are converting the cents to the pound equivalent. The second one would be 2.32 divided by 100. And the third one, I think 1.15 divided by 100. So what would that be? So this would be 0.0355. So plus 1.9 gives us 1.9355. Okay, so that is the rate. The next one, 0.0232 plus 1.92. And my calculator, 1.9432. And then the last one, 0.015 plus 1.94, 1.9515. Okay, so which of these three options is the cheapest for us? Which of these options is cheapest for us? Which of them is this one? This is the cheapest for us. The cheapest is the 1.355. So that is the one we will buy. That's the option we would buy. So we can quickly write it down quickly and save. Where's my? Okay, sorry, I'm not sure. I'm not seeing my pen. Okay. Just a sec. I'm not sure why my pen is not showing. Let me reconnect that quickly. Okay, so it's up now. So we can say that the cheapest of the three
So, sir,
is the option. Just a moment. I'm going to take your question shortly. Is the option with an exercise price of 1.90 with an upfront premium of 0.0355. Okay, please go ahead with your question now so that we can summarize and then we can round up. Yes, please.
Are you saying in real life scenario?
Yes, sir.
If I want to buy now, I will have to look for the cheapest.
Yeah, because you're making payment. If you're an investor, the opposite would be the case. So if you're making payment, would you be looking for the cheaper options, or you be looking for the more expensive option? If you're going to buy something, are you looking for the cheapest out of available, or are you looking for the most expensive?
I will look for the cheapest.
Yeah, so that's basically it. Is that clear?
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. So that's basically it. All right. So we're going to go for this option. However, like we mentioned, you need to pay an upfront premium to get the right to buy the FX at 1.90. You need to pay an upfront premium. So let's calculate what we need to pay now to get that right. That is our upfront premium. So our upfront premium would be the premium rate multiplied by the number of contracts multiplied by the contract size. So our premium rate is 0.0355. How many contracts did we buy under the option? How many contracts? 160 contracts. Our contract size is 31,250. So that is 160, 31,250. So what do they give you? That is 177,500. Now you need to pay that now. If you don't pay it, you don't have the right, because the upfront, the premium is required upfront. Now, once you pay that 177,500, you then have the option, which is the right, to buy pounds at 1.90. 160 contracts, 31,250. So what do we have? If you do go ahead, you're going to spend 9.5. Now let's see how option work compared. Now let's see how option will work compared to futures. Now, if in 3 months' time, now all of these things we're doing it now. Now we're moving on to 3 months now. Now, if in 3 months' time, the exchange rate, actual exchange rate, is a final step, please. I know we're gone past 6 o'clock your time. If in 3 months' time, the actual exchange rate is 1.9, let's say 1.95. And if in 3 months' time, the actual exchange rate is 1.85, what will you do? You have the option, regardless of what the price is in the market, you have the option to buy at 1.90 after you have paid the upfront premium at 1.90. So what are we going to do? Would we exercise or not? Okay, so let's look at the first one. You have an option to buy at 1.90. In the market out there in 3 months' time, the exchange rate is 1.95. Would you exercise the option and take the 1.90, or you will let the option go because you have the right not to take it or not take it, or you let the option go and go to the market and buy at 1.95? What will you do? What would you do? Would you take the option and buy at 1.90, or you'd let the option go and go to the market and buy at the actual exchange rate of 1.95? Guys, what would they do?
I will take the option.
Thank you very much. Because you take the option because it's cheaper for you to take the option at 1.90. The market is more expensive. The market is 1.95. So why would I go to the market and buy at 1.95 when I have an option to buy at 1.90? So if you do take the option, which is yes, you will make a gain or save your company 0.05. So that would be 0.05 multiplied by 160 multiplied by 31,250. So how much would you save your company based on the option you went into? So the 0.05 is 1.95 minus 1.90, please. That is 0.05. 1.95 minus 1.90, that is 0.05. So that's 0.05 multiplied by 160 multiplied by 31,250. So how much will you save your company?
250.
250K. And let's look at the next part. You have an option. Now, this part of the question is not part of our question. I'm just putting it just to illustrate, just in case you have that extra bit. So you have an option to buy pounds at 1.90. But in the market, pound is going at 1.85. What will you do? You don't have to overthink it. It's what everybody will do. Will you take the option and buy at 1.90, or you would leave the option because it's a right, you're not obligated to do it. You leave the option and then go to the market and buy at 1.85. What will you do? Will you exercise? Yes or no? Guys, what will you do?
Option and go to market.
Thank you. So you will not exercise the option, and that is no. Sorry, what's wrong with my pen? This late. Okay, so that is a no. So you not exercise the option. So because you don't exercise, the option, you're not going to refund anything. Unlike in future where you have to make up for the balance. So you're not making any gain. You're not making any loss because nothing is coming out of your hands subsequently. Because you have the right to say, I want to proceed, or you have the right to say, I don't want to proceed. If it favors you, you proceed. If it doesn't favor you, you back out. And that is the advantage of an option over a futures. In a futures, you still have to go ahead at the locking rate. So whatever you spend has to be equal to the locking rate. But in an option, if it's favorable to you, you take it. If it's not favorable, you back out. Any question on options? So we can round up. Yes, please.
Now, I'm also looking at a scenario whereby I'm referring to the second scenario.
Okay.
185, 1.85 and 1.85. What am I going to do?
What you do doesn't matter. Whether you decide to take the option or you decide to go to the market, it's still the same amount you end up spending. So what you do doesn't matter. So anyone you do, you're fine because the rates are the same.
And it's an option anyway.
It's an option. Thank you. That's the key point. It's an option. You have the right, but not an obligation. Okay.
Thank you.
But you can see that in futures. Let's go back to futures quickly to tell you why option is very important. You could see that in futures, your lock-in rate is 9657. So even when in the market in 3 months time, it was even cheaper for you in the market, you still had to take your total cost to 9657, because no matter what the price is in the market, the total cost will not change from 9657. So you ended up having to pay an extra 57,000 to ensure that you keep to that exact constant lock-in rate of 9657. But if it were an option, you can decide to say, because it doesn't favor me, I don't want to proceed. Any question? All right, guys. So let's even quickly compare the three, which is the questions we should look at. Which of them should we advise the oil servicing company to go for? Quickly, that should take like 1-2 minutes. We did forwards, we did futures, and we did option. So which of the three should we advise the oil servicing firm to go for? Let's quickly look at that question again to be sure that that is what we're asked to do. Yeah, so we should advise. So if we went for forward, what is the total amount on that forward? My total amount on that forward was 9,669,500. 9,669,500 is what we have on that forward. So let's look at our summary. Okay, so what do we have on the forward? What do we have on the futures? And what do we have on the options, so that we can advise these guys properly on what to do? So that we can advise them properly on what to do. So under forwards, we had 9,669,000. Under futures, what do we have? Let's go back quickly. Under futures, what do we have? Quickly, so we could round up. What do we have under futures? Okay, our total is 9,657 under futures. So that futures 9,657. So that futures 9,657. Under option, what do we have? So under option, we have without the premium 95. However, plus the premium we have 9677. 9677. Okay, guys. So which of these options do you which of these three do you think should go for? Now, your answer will depend on what you think is important to your company. And so, without the upfront premium, which of the three is favorable? Upfront. Without the upfront premium, which of the three is the cheapest? Which of the three? The option.
It's not
The option is recommended. However, if the premium is considered, which of them would pass?
Future.
Yeah, the futures would be recommended. If the benefits of option is taken into consideration, if the benefits / flexibility of option is taken into consideration, if the benefits / flexibility is considered, then despite the upfront premium, option would be considered. Option would be considered the better deal. Okay, so guys, that would be my recommendation. If you're looking at it without upfront premium, let's go for option. If you're looking at it with upfront premium, let's go for futures. However, overall for me, I would go for option because of the flexibility that comes with the option, instead of just looking at that minor difference from the upfront premium. So that's what I would recommend. Okay, guys. So that's been our consideration of currency risk management. So I encourage everyone, please resolve this question on your own, because currency risk management has a higher chance of showing up in November, given that interest rate was tested in May. And with the step we followed, if you don't go out of the steps, you would never get it wrong. You will never get it wrong if you don't go out of the step. Any question, guys? We've gone past our 1 hour 30 minutes budgeted for this, but if there are any questions, I can quickly take that before we call it now. Yep, go ahead.
My own is that this video, can we get it today, sir?
Sure. I'll try and get it to you guys before our class at 9 p.m. I'll try and get it across to you guys.
We appreciate that, sir, so that we can all join late. We can go through it.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll do that. I'll try and do that. Just have a very busy schedule, but I'll try and do that. Yeah, please go ahead.
A lot of questions that you
Sorry, I didn't get your comment. Can you say that again?
the pilot questions that you saw for.
Okay, yeah. I think I saw someone's comment on that. Oops, I just I'll try and get that across very soon together with this one. So when I'm working on this one, I'll just upload it along with that one when I'm uploading this one. Thank you for that reminder. Okay, guys. So I'll see you guys at 9 p.m. Hopefully you are able to fully understand how to approach currency risk management with the question we've solved. So please just stick to the steps. You will never get it wrong. We stick to the steps, and then look for 1 or 2 other questions and practice to sharpen your knowledge on it. All right. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys at 9 p.m. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.